Hello everybody, this is Loci WayOfLoci and welcome to the No Hit Podcast. Here it is my job to interview the extraordinary people in gaming, the hitless runners who beat difficult games without taking a single hit or point of damage, speedrunners completing games in mere minutes that would normally take hours, or those who have finished games completely blindfolded, or the amazing content creators and developers out there producing the engaging and entertaining content and games that we all enjoy. Today's guest is CookieNaval, that's CookieNaval on YouTube, Twitch and Twitter. Cookie is a world record speedrunner of the Crash Bandicoot series with records across the series in the GBA games, the N-Sane Trilogy, Crash Bandicoot 4 and more, as well as completed hitless runs of several games in the series. In this conversation we go into how Cookie got involved in speedrunning and progressed toward record runs, the appeal of longer runs and the collection aspect of Crash Bandicoot, approaching hitless runs after speedrunning, and Cookie's experience with live events, online hitless showcases and an in-person live event at ESA, or the European Speedrunner Assembly, and much, much more. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with CookieNaval. Right, Cookie, thanks very much for taking some time to come on the podcast today. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing okay.
Wanted to start out, as you do, on beginnings, on your introduction to speedrunning, because I had quite a nostalgia shock when I was going into your channel and seeing some of the videos on Experiment 626, which I played a ton when I was younger. So I was interested in how you came to speedrunning, really.
That is a blast in the past. Yeah, the way that I got invested into speedrunning was I feel like most people turn to speedrunning like after a GDQ or a similar event. I didn't know what GDQ was for like 1 year after I started using Twitch. I knew about GDQ like super late compared to most people. But I used to watch more YouTube, and I was watching this like a compilation of a Kingdom Hearts content creator. And then at the end there was like, oh, if you want to watch these live, go to Twitch. And this was like back in 2018. So that's when I created my Twitch account. And then I pretty much didn't follow anyone until 2019. And then in 2019 I branched out more into like the Kingdom Hearts speedrunning scene. And then I thought about speedrunning myself. And at the time I was at college and I had like a pretty crappy laptop because I was in a college far from home. So I decided to look on speedrun.com for like one of the games that I had back at home, if I could do it in my laptop. I had more interest on platformers. I grew up with pretty much PS1 and PS2 games because that's what I have most at home. And nowadays it's starting to lessen a little bit, but back in the day, no PS2 emulation was allowed for any game at all.
Okay.
Because PS2 emulation was pretty crappy back then.
I was gonna ask if there was any decent emulators back then for the PS2, because I imagine it would have been a struggle.
There were decent emulators. Like I think most people know is PCSX2. I think that's the name. But it wasn't good enough to like mimic the original console, because you could always get an unfair advantage on emulator that people don't have on normal console. But for some reason, what you just said, Experiment 66, which was a game that I also grew up with, they allowed emulators. And I was like, oh, let's give it a shot.
Perfect.
And I started doing just offline runs, just getting used to the game, because it's not a very ran game. I think, including myself, I think there's only 3 people, maybe 4, that have submitted to that game. What I liked about that game is, so for people that don't know that game, it's like a collectathon where you need to collect 900 DNA. But to get to the final boss, you only need 640, if I'm not mistaken. So the game not being that popular, I really liked the routing aspect that I had to do for the game. Because I had to find out which 640 out of the 900 were the fastest to collect. And I really liked that aspect about the game.
The routing aspect.
Yeah. So that's any percent. I did also the other categories, including 100%. But yeah. Also, one funny thing, I used to do my runs offline, but when I decided to try Twitch, because at the time I didn't know that you stream on Twitch and you kind of don't need to record because the VOD is saved.
The VODs, yeah.
So in that first stream, I did get a PB for any percent that I was doing. And then when I went to look up the VOD, I couldn't find the VOD for that stream.
Oh, was it
And
the settings? It wasn't turned on or something.
yeah, and then I started digging, and for some reason, maybe it was on by default because when I usually like install or download or create an account, I always
Hmm.
leave default. I don't like to touch the settings because I'm extremely bad with computer stuff. And apparently there was this option that was on by default that was save VODs, and it was unticked for some reason.
I think that's still a thing, you know. I think it's off by default for people who create new Twitch accounts. I don't know
It
well,
is off, yeah.
I imagine the reason is storage costs. Like they don't
Yeah,
want to like
maybe.
save it for new accounts, but it's also very annoying if like in your example you do something well, it's like, oh, I've got to learn now. This is an issue.
Yeah. Like, I don't know how, for the outside of speedrunning scene and like content creation, if you're just streaming casually on Twitch, yeah, it's that part. Like, I don't know if that average Twitch person like uses VODs for anything. So that's maybe
Yeah.
why it's off by default.
I was going to ask, did the focus then go on Crash Bandicoot? But you've also done Disney games, so what was the path to Crash, or was it an immediate step to that from Experiment 626? Which I should mention, of people who might have got the reference, is that game is based on Lilo Stitch. Stitch's Experiment 626, which probably should have mentioned at the start.
Yeah, the game is pretty much you're working for Jumba, which is the person that created Experiment 626, and you're gathering like material so he can create even more experiments. But yeah, after I started speedrunning and then I started following even more speedrunners on Twitch, I eventually stumbled upon Crash Bandicoot, pretty much all of the games. I had like a speedrunner that I followed for like each game, whether it being OG, Crash Team Racing, NST. And then I was eventually back at home from college. And I myself, I'm more like on the casual aspect, I'm more of a console gamer,
Hmm.
but I don't have a capture card, which is like kind of required if you want to stream console games.
Yeah, I don't think they have very long video recording, do they, in any of the consoles?
Yeah.
Unless they've improved
There-
it in the recent ones.
yeah, you can like directly stream from PS4. I think you can also
Mm.
from PS5, but it's also the fact that I think you can only have like the game, so you don't have live split also showing
Yeah, true.
if you directly stream. But you don't need a capture card if you're streaming from PC. And Crash Anasty was one of like the 7 games I had at the time on PC. So I thought to myself, let's give this a try to see if I like it or not. And apparently 4 years later, yeah, I eventually grew up with how much I liked the speedrunning NST.
Do you have a preference over it towards the OG, or do both have their own merits when speedrunning them?
Both OG and NST are very different.
Okay.
Even movement aspect, only I think they're pretty much all different, all the 6 games, even though NST 2 and 3 share a little bit of the movement. But yeah, I try to stay simple at first, which I started with NST 1, and literally the movement tech is just jumping.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just mashing X because there's only 2 things you can do on Crash 1, which is jump and spin, and that's it. So I started simple. Yeah, the fastest movement tech is just jumping. So it's pretty easy to get a hang of.
I guess for the N-Sane Trilogy for Crash 1 and 2, I believe, it's difficult in the sense that it wasn't designed for time trials, because time trials only came in Warped, if I'm remembering right, in the OG series, but then they reintroduced it for the N-Sane Trilogy.
That is correct. I wouldn't like it's relics in NST 1 and 2 are pretty weird. Um
How come?
because like they almost feel like it's not a challenge. I don't know how it's in the casual aspect, but if you have that movement tech of just jumping, that alone eliminates pretty much any of the challenge that the relics in Crash 1 give you. I don't know, the times could definitely have been a little tougher. I think it's just a matter of getting to the end of the level. And if you get to the end of the level, you pretty much get the relics. There is some exceptions, of course. There's always some levels that are going to be harder. For example, Lab is a very infamous level to get the platinum relic, for example. And
That's
then
the
in
one. Oh, sorry. I was just saying, is that the one at the end where you've got to like time the doors going up and down?
yeah, that's the very last level
Yep.
of Crash 1. And then in NSC 2, I don't know how balanced they are because NSC 2 also introduced the running shoes because that was also only in Crash 3 OG because Crash 2 OG didn't have running shoes.
Okay.
But yeah, they're also not that much difficult, I think, if you have the running shoes as well.
So starting with one, is that one you focused on, or did you go between the three of them?
I started with 105, which is the maximum completion for NST1.
Okay. Interesting. How come that one, as opposed to like any percent, which like think is quote unquote a normal place to start? So just
Yeah.
running like the fully complete run.
For me, I have this gripe that like Crash is very clearly a collectathon game. Like it's coupled together with those collectathon games like Crash, Spyro, Jack and Daxter, Mario. Like the purpose of the game is to collect everything. And when I've tried, like I did, now that I remember, like I did do a run of NST1 any percent and NST3 any percent. But it's for me, it doesn't feel like satisfying because you're skipping pretty much like the purpose of the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I've always find it more satisfying to just run the full completion categories for me. And also, I think this also came pretty early on my mentality. Let's say you have a short run, right? Let's say you have a speed run that's like, let's say 30 minutes. If you do a 5-second mistake, that's more impactful on that 30-minute run than it would otherwise be on like a 2-hour run.
Yeah.
So I also like that aspect of completion over 80% because if you make a mistake, that is quote unquote fine because you can get that time elsewhere. Whereas in any percent, it's pretty much obviously not at the start when you're speedrunning, but once you get to a high level, like you make a mistake, you automatically have to reset.
So which game was it that you went from, or I guess put the time in and the effort in to go from casual to high level in that category and then eventually world record? Was it the 105 first or?
Yeah, 105 was my first category that I got world record. If I'm not mistaken, I took 8 months since my first run to getting a world record. But yeah, I pretty much only focused on that category. I didn't stream for like every day of those 8 months. But yeah, I started speedrunning, if I'm not mistaken, like June 2020, which I think is when there was a big influx of new runners because of, quarantine back in
Yeah, stuck at
2020.
home. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I started in June 2020, and I think I got it by February of 2021.
For that like 105% that you got the world record in, did you have an approach in learning the speed run and then improving that? Is that the same thing, or is it different in when you've already got the speed run down and now you're just shaving seconds off it?
So there is in the speedrun, there's two very prominent skips because for people that don't know Crash 1, there's like levels where you get to the end or even in the middle of the level, you have like a platform that's gonna be like, I don't know the word, but like gonna be kind of visible, but you can't access that platform.
Oh, like
And that
one of the unlockable platforms.
yeah, and you
Yep.
need to get a color gem from a
Yep.
later level, and then you need to go back
Mm-hmm.
to get all the boxes, because that's like pretty much the thing about Crash 1. There's a lot of levels in the beginning where you can't get all the boxes. They need a
Yeah.
collectible from the end game. then you need to backtrack. But there is 2 levels where you can skip that requirement. And I tried, even before I started doing my first run, I tried learning those skips. One of the skips, which is in the 3rd level, Great Gate, is very easy. I don't focus on Crash 1 anymore, but if I went back to Crash 1, I could do that skip 100 times in a row and not fail it. It's that easy. And then there's one that can be a little bit tricky, but once you've done it a few times, it gets consistent. And with that one, the way I decided to learn that skip was, okay, I'm gonna try it, and I'm only gonna feel confident doing this in runs if I can get this skip 10 times in a row. And if I get
Okay.
it 10 times in a row, I feel like, okay, that's good to do in the actual runs. And that's when I started speedrunning 105. The rest, when it comes to speedrunning, in the beginning, I was pretty much like a monkey see, monkey do. Back then, I didn't really like to innovate strats because NST released in 2017. So by 2020, there were already some pretty well established strats. So I just kind of decided to like try to do what everyone else does, but better and faster. And it's also not like you're gonna start speedrunning this category. Obviously, at the very beginning, you don't expect to get whir, but it's just a matter of you keep doing the category over and over. And then I think when I was first going for sub 2 hours, I think I took a pretty long time to get sub 2. But yeah, and then as you PB in the category, you start kind of evaluating yourself to see, okay, can I pass the person in front of me? If yes, then you kind of continue running if you're motivated to do so. And then it got to a point where, okay, I'm already top 5, and then I'm already top 3, and then I can see, oh, I have a pretty fair shot to get world record, so let's try and do that.
So
So
it's the case of
that's
like incremental steps as opposed to just go, okay, I'm going to be world record in the next
yeah,
couple of weeks.
for sure, for sure. Because I feel that like I remember when I was a new runner, I was streaming on Twitch, and then I saw the world record holder at the time for any percent. In my chat, I immediately started like fangirling, like, oh my god, he's in my chat, he's in my chat. But yeah, now I'm proud to call them pretty much all of them my friends.
What was the, like, just thinking of, because it was a few years ago, was everything still on Discord? Or, because obviously nowadays there's so many open communities for every speedrunning game and category under the sun, but how was it back then in terms of like sharing strats and chatting and that sort of stuff?
So you always have like the forum on speedrun.com, but I think the Crash HD, the community, they would answer your question in the forum, and then like if you had further question, they would always direct you to the Discord. Because but yeah, that's pretty much where all of the theorizing, all of the strat sharing takes place.
Yeah.
We have a Discord shared between. We have NSD 1, 2, and 3. We have Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, which is the remake for the Crash Team Racing, and we also have Crash 4.
Just going on from the completion side or the long run side. So we're talking in terms of the 105, talking around 2 hours, under 2 hours. But as I was doing some research on some of the longer runs you've done, we go into 8 hour plus runs. So would you be able to explain to people what the I've got no idea, Sprashfecta 652% run is?
Yeah, so I don't really know because I only started speedrunning in 2020. I don't really know how Sprash was created because you obviously have like a very big relation between Crash and Spyro. Like they're the two amigos.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that just started back with the OG ones. Like I know people from Crash OG that started speedrunning in 2012. And I think they created like the Sprash categories, which is Crash 1, 2, 3, and Spyro 1, 2, 3, in whatever order you want. And I think that when NST and then when SRT for Spyro came around, it was only logical to also add those, even if they aren't that ran compared to the OG.
Which isn't surprising considering the runs I was seeing range from 16 to 19 hours to do all 6 games.
Yeah, because in HD, they're even longer. I think
Oh, okay.
it only impacts NST 1 and 2 because of the relics they added that add like 50 plus minutes to the run, because NST 3 and OG 3 are pretty much like around the same time. OG 3 world record is 1 hour 57, and then NST 3 is 2 hours 2 minutes. So they're not that far off. And I think the same goes for SRT. There might be a little bit bigger of a gap, but nothing like the 50 minutes that NST 1 and 2 add over the originals. But yeah, that was usually, I think it's every year, there is a Sprash, what we call Sprashfecta run done for the OG. And then there's not really that much done for the HD part. And so at the time, me and my friends just decided to, on like a best time to gather and all of us do a Splash run for HD.
A good old 6-game speed run.
Yeah, you say that it's 13 plus, 16 plus, but obviously you also have the any percents, which is way lower.
Yeah, true. But I guess with it is just the concentration. Obviously, in that regard, it's probably a more chill session. It's not fully competitive aspect of the 6-game run, but
because that's also one thing that I like about longer categories, which is you can just chill. If something goes wrong, you laugh, you continue. But yeah, at the time, I don't remember my time at all for that Splash run. I know I did 2 runs, and at the time I wasn't as good at NST as I am now. And then SRT, I started that run, the first run that I did, because I did 2. So the first run that I didn't grow up with Spyro games. The first Spyro game that I played was Spyro 1, and that was on the PS3 when they came to PS3.
Oh, for the Reignited. Or was there something before that?
No, I don't know what it's called, but there was like a few PS1 games that went to the PS3. Okay. And if you don't know, PS3 is the worst console to play a PS1 game because the loads are somehow worse than a PS1. I think there's like some game exceptions, but that's pretty much the norm. Never play a PS1 game on a PS3.
They say technology is improving.
And I've never played Spyro 2 and 3. So I just figured, hey, let's do this Splash run and do Spyro 2 and 3 completely blind. I've never played those games. If I'm not mistaken, which I probably will, I think the world record for Spyro 3 stands around 3 hours, low 3 hours. I don't remember the minutes. And I think my first run of Spyro 3 blind was like close to 8 hours.
But I'd say with that one, it's more like a first playthrough.
It's pretty much, yeah.
Must have been mind blowing. Just like you can slide, you can body slam. There's power ups.
I think a good thing about the Spyro Reignited trilogy that also kind of led me to do the runs blind is that if you don't know where a certain gem is, you can press, I think, L3, and then Sparks, which is the little dragonfly that displays your health, is gonna point you towards the nearest gem. And
really?
that doesn't exist on OG. It doesn't exist on OG 2, and then in OG 3, it's upgrade that you get from completing a level. But in SRT, you have it in all of the games from the start. If you don't know where a certain gem is, you can just press the button and it's gonna point you towards the nearest gem.
Holy, I wish I'd known that a few weeks ago when I did a challenge run on it. That is good to know.
One thing I'd also like to ask, because I didn't upload this to speedrun.com because like at the time it was a run that included Wrath of Cortex, which is the PS2
Hmm.
game for Crash. And back then, again, emulator runs weren't allowed. But I pretty much like I didn't care because I just want to finish the run for just
Just
for
to finish it.
fun. It's
Yeah.
not all about like the competitive side. If you're not having fun, then
Mm.
like what's the point of doing it? But there was a run that I did and it was 32 hours RTA. It
Okay.
was I say RTA because in the last in the last game, life split crashed, so I couldn't keep track of IGT.
And just for people who might not know the acronyms, what's the difference between IGT and RTA?
So IGT is called in-game time. It's pretty much on PS4 games and PC games. It's the time that you get when you take out the time that it takes for the game to load. For like, let's say, loading screens, room transitions, for example. And RTA, which is real-time attack, is just all of it, including the
Yeah.
times that it takes to load.
Yeah. From
Obviously, with NST, for example, it's and like pretty much all of the games that have loads, like PC games, it's always
mm-hmm.
better to go by IGT or else it would like the speedrunning scene would be just be rich, get a high-end PC, and then you're
Yeah.
gonna beat everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives a fair chance
Yeah.
to someone that might not have a that good of a PC. And that's also one of the reasons why we cap NST speedruns at 60 FPS.
Okay.
Because there's a thing where in NST, Crash will naturally move faster the higher your FPS is. So that's why we cap
Okay.
it at 60.
So you can just go unlimited, crank it out, and Sonic your
Yeah,
way through with.
there's a category extension that is just unlimited FPS.
Mm.
But yeah, that 32-hour run is
Mm.
all of this is completion. Crash 1, 2, 3, Wrath of Cortex for PS2, Huge Adventure and Entrance for GBA, NST 1, 2, 3, and then Crash 4. And if you don't know Crash 4, it's like that game that casually it's gonna take you upwards of 70 hours to complete.
It's a chunky one.
It's a very chunky one.
Okay, we'll start. How was it? When did Crash 4 come out? Okay, best start there.
Was it 2021? Was it one?
Think so. I thought it was. Yeah, I think it's one or two. It might be one. If it's one, it's Bennett.
No, no,
Time
no. It's
flies.
no, it's definitely 2021 because I'm doing the math in my head of like how long did I spend grinding the game. 2021 sounds about right.
Time's going too fast. 4 years since the Crash sequel. Anyway, so I was wondering, how was after getting into like the Crash speedrunning scene in like the past year, going into it like casually and then going into speedrunning it.
For Crash 4,
Yeah.
there was a good thing that I liked about Crash 4, which
Hmm.
is again, I started speedrunning in 2020 and NST came out in 2017. So the
Mm.
things like the strats were pretty much already implemented. If
Yeah.
you wanted to implement something, it would just be like a slight optimization sometimes.
But this
Would
was a
it
brand
Crash?
new thing.
Yeah, but with Crash 4, I was pretty glad to be there since the beginning. Now, I
Mm.
couldn't do runs because it originally only came out on console, and I don't have a capture card. But I did a few runs directly streaming from the PS4 without live split, just
Hmm.
as like a speed running like practice without live split. I had live split on my laptop, and it was just tracking RTA. But yeah, it was pretty nice to see the game just literally week one after it was released just be completely broken with all sorts of skips that save over 30 seconds in each level, and some of them even 1 minute.
What's like some examples? Because that's major skips for like speedrunning.
There is one of the easiest and earliest skips is on the very first boss fight in Engine.
Yes. Yeah.
The objective of the boss is to like he has four what's it called like health chunks. It's not I don't want to
Yeah.
say health bars.
Health points.
Yeah, health points.
I know. I know
So
it sounds like Pokemon, but it still works for these.
yeah, So he has like 4 health points, and the way you do the fight is he's gonna send you 3 minions, and then you spin the 3 minions back at him, and you damage him once, and then he's gonna send out 3 minions again, and you spin and back and forward until you get all the 4 points. And I think casually, like if you do it this way, that fight is like 3 minutes. I think I timed it once. I don't really. I think it's like 3 minutes 20, something around that ballpark. But it turns out when you hit the first 3 minions back at him, and it turns out that instead of hitting him once, if you do a slide spin, it's like it's pretty much our theory. So the slide is gonna do the first bit of HP to him, and then the spin is gonna be like spinning the next 3 minions back at him. So by doing a slide spin, you attack him like twice in quick succession, and for the second, third, and fourth health point, you skip having to spin the 3 minions again. So it goes from like a 3 minute 20 to a 1 minute fight.
That must have been impressive. Like, and that strat was posted on the forum or whatever. Just like, oh yeah, I found a way to take 2 minutes off the run.
Yeah, it's literally just press 2 buttons. Literally everyone that's listening can just boot up the game and do that. It's pressing 2 buttons, and that's it. And then there's other skips where it's, for example, you can see the ending, like, what's it called? The ending box of each level on like the horizon. But for example, you need to go to the right, and then you need to go to the left. But you can just, instead of going to the right, all the way to the right and all the way to the left, you just can go out of bounds and straight towards the exit.
Oh, okay. So like when it's the exit to the game or the finish line of the game is in the background, you can just out of bounds it to reach it.
Yeah. Crash for any percent is a very out of bounds type of category. There's, besides out of bounds, there's also something that's called zombie, which is if you pause the game at in the same frame that you die, the game thinks you're dead, but you can still control Crash. And because the game thinks you're dead, you can do all sorts of things that you wouldn't be able to do if the game didn't think you were dead. For example, you can walk on water. You can be Crash Jesus.
I mean, it makes lore sense. Crash has died, he returns and is able to walk on water. Going into, again, the completion side on the runs is the 100% in Crash 4, which at the current runs it's 4.5 hours. I imagine it was a lot longer during those initial days. And Crash 4 being a major, we talked earlier about the games being like a collectathon kind of game, but Crash 4 really went on steroids for that collection aspect.
Yeah.
So how was that to begin running?
I think they went completely overboard. I think they pretty much just wanted to kind of justify the game on release being $60. So if it's like, if you pay $60 for a game and you have the same content that you have on the OG games, maybe you're not going to feel satisfied at $60, and maybe that's probably what they thought as well. So they just pumped every collectible into the game known to man.
And then doubled it.
Yeah, there's 556 gems, which is an insane amount. Hey, you talk about 100% run being 4.5 hours. There's a longer category, which is 106%, because usually collectathons have this little quirky thing that they always like to go above 100%. I think it started back when like Spiral 1, because Spiral 1 goes to 120%.
Yeah, with that extra like treasure level or something, wasn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, Crash for 100 is 4.5 hours. Crash and 106% is 6 hours 38, which is 2 hours longer. I don't really remember when I started doing that run, but I think usually when you start that run, the ballpark for your first run is usually around 9 to 10 hours. Yeah, obviously because it's a very long category, not a lot of people run it and I
I imagine it's
found a good like opportunity to like take that run and improve it a little bit because
mm,
again, I enjoy long categories a lot because you can just sit back and relax. I don't remember what time I got world record in that category, but yeah, I got world record and I eventually brought it back down to a 6 hours 38 minutes.
I imagine it was a huge amount of learning of the game you'd have to do with number of boxes and gems and obviously all the collectibles, because in the original series at least, like the box number, I think the highest is like near 100, maybe above, but below that. And then in Crash 4, that's like the minimum up to like 500. I think it goes up to 500 plus or something. So keeping track of every level of every box of everything must have took a lot of prep, I guess.
For sure, for sure. So 106% is collecting everything that's in the
Mm,
game, but there's also another main category, which is called all clear gems, and
okay.
that is just collecting 228 gems in the game.
Okay.
So you don't need to repeat any level again. So every level has 6 gems. So you just collect all the 6 gems in every level. And that is the main thing that you need to start with if you want to plan to do 106%. Not only because that's a pretty significant part of the run, but also because you have 228 clear gems and you
Hmm.
have 228 inverted gems.
Yep.
And inverted gems is only accessible through inverted mode. And what inverted mode does is literally flip vertically the level.
Mm.
So it's like as you're practicing, as you're doing ACG, you already know where the boxes are going to be in
Mm.
inverted mode as well because it's just flipped. So that's a very important thing to practice if you want to do a 106. You really
Mm.
can't do a 106 without doing a little bit of prep in all clear gems, which is the category that I started with. I think it was March 2022 because that's when it came to PC, I think. I started speedrunning Crash 4 when it came to PC, and I eventually got the record with, if I'm not mistaken, a 2 hour 48 minutes around that. And I still have world record, and I brought it from a 2 hour 48 to a
Mm.
2 hour 19, which
That's with
is
80%, right?
an all clear gems.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's rapid.
And that is by far that is like my category. It's the category that I put the most focus on. Like I think a good 2 years
Mm.
of doing all clear gems. And I also did 106 on the side as well because the run is that long. You pretty much all of the 106 runs that you do are pretty much resetless unless
Mm.
you maybe want to reset on like the first 10 minutes or so of the
Mm.
run. But yeah, 106 is pretty much, in my opinion, what it boils down to is an all clear gems run twice because you need to do all clear gems and all inverted gems. Any percent because you need to do the relics, which is pretty
Mhm.
much, I think there's only one or two level that's different,
Mhm.
but getting all the relics is pretty much the same strats that you use in any percent. And then you have all flashback tapes, which is
Okay.
a new collectible that they add in Crash 4, which is pretty much just a big bonus round. And I think doing you don't even need to practice certain strats for flashback tapes. Just do a couple of runs, get familiar with the layout of the level. But yeah, that's pretty much 106. ACG twice, any percent, and then 30 minutes of bonus rounds.
So majority of those long runs, you would almost always see them out to the end. Is there any sort of thing that would always constitute a reset, several deaths, or is it most of the time it was just full runs again and again?
Yeah, not at all. I think that because the run is that long, you can definitely have major time losses and
Mm.
somehow still manage to get a PB because it is super hard obviously, to play consistently throughout that entire time. But I think it kind of depends on your mentality. That's also another thing that you need to kind of focus on speedrunning in general. It's having a good mentality because you can make a mistake and then you can be, slightly tilted at that mistake, and that causes you to make more mistakes. So I think it's nice to have a good mentality of, it's a long run. It's fine that I mess this up. Let's just sit back, relax. It happens because even if I'm speedrunning Crash for this long, I can recognize it's a pretty hard game. There's also a collectible that you need to get, which is break all the boxes without dying. And I think that's pretty much the major time loss that you can have, is because you can make a single mistake and that mistake costs you immediately 3 minutes.
Yeah, but a whole level redo.
Yeah. But yeah, I think one thing that can help you in the beginning is having a split for every level, and then you keep track of your sum of best. So let's say, for example, I know runners that, or for example, they have a 7 hour sum of best and their PB is 8 hours, right?
Yep.
So if they die in a level, they have to redo it. It costs, for example, let's say 5 minutes to do the entire level again. Let's say the best possible time just gets worse by 5 minutes. You still have 55 more minutes that you can play with, if that makes sense.
That you can still shave some time off in that whole period.
Yeah, I don't remember. I think that my current world record for Crash 4, I think I miss a box and I have to repeat the level. So yeah, it's just a matter of pretty much accepting that you are gonna repeat a level. And I think that's one criticism that I think I can give to casual players of Crash 4. It's like if you go into the game and you accept that you're gonna miss a box, that you're gonna die a lot, I think you're gonna have more fun with the game. I know it's a meme, but when NST came out, they call it the Dark Souls of platformers. And I think it's the same. When you start a From Software game, you don't go into the game like you expect to die at some point.
Yeah.
It's the whole point of the game. It's trial and error. And I
You know what
think
you signed up for.
you know what you signed up for. So if you go to Crash 4 expecting, I think if you go into Crash 4 expecting the same experience from the other Crash games, I think that's a bad thing to do and you're not gonna enjoy the game. Because that's also a thing I see with people that are starting out all clear gems. Because all clear gems, you can die up to 3 times in a level, and if you miss a box, you get to the end and you have to redo the whole level. Some people might get discouraged by that fact of the speedrun, and that's a thing that I try to convey to those new runners that expect that you're gonna miss a box. I think I've done the calculations at one point. I think it's like 15,000 boxes, and you can't expect to know all of them on your first run. You're
Yeah, of
definitely
course.
you're 100% gonna miss a box, and that's for new runners because new runners usually take around like upwards to between 3 and 4 hours is a good run for your first run. And I remember the first run where I didn't have a single revisit was a 2 hours 36, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not like you can't get a good time with revisits because you definitely can.
So it's just on that mentality aspect you talked about, being able to accept that these things in runs happen. Is that something you think you had going into speedrunning, or you've developed over the time of just running more and more and experience of having done a lot more speedruns?
I think it's something that you have to develop for sure. And that was the same case with me. I partially developed that, but I think one thing that I had going for me was that, so for example, I started with NST1 and I was trying to get world record. So maybe my mentality was a little bit worse, where I made a mistake and I immediately put in my head, okay, I can't get world record anymore. But with Crash 4, I set the world record very soon that all the improvements I did was just improving my own time. I wasn't trying to beat someone. I mean, I was trying to beat my own time. And I think that kind of helped with my mentality to a certain point. There's not like any pressure trying to beat the person that's ahead of you on the leaderboards. But yeah, again, that's also one thing it's one thing why I stuck with longer runs as well. Again, you make a mistake, it's fine, just continue to run.
Out of interest, with Crash 4, obviously there's 4 characters. Okay, yeah, I think. Do you have any preference between them during the speedrun? Or any that are particularly difficult, I should say?
I guess without choosing Crash, which is a little bit
why not? Just go
cheating.
with the easy option.
You have 3 other playable characters, which is Tawna, Cortex, and Dingodile. I think my favorite to play with is definitely Dingodile. Because there's not a lot of fast things you can do, even with pretty much all the 3. Because in Crash 4, when you're controlling Crash, the faster form of movement is doing slide spins over and over. And the fastest form of movement with Tawna and Dingodile is holding the left analog forward. And that's it. There's nothing you can do to make the character go faster.
Basically back to Crash 1 again.
Yeah. And casually, I think that's definitely the character that I like most. He's just a chunky little boy. And I like the gameplay aspect that comes with his vacuum cleaner. With like hovering and sucking up boxes and TNTs. The character that I dislike the most is definitely Cortex. I think pretty much because of all the slight bugs and slight errors he has. He's the only alternate playable character with an actual movement tech, which is dashing. And the hitbox of that dash is a little bit jank sometimes.
It's like he does like a human rocket kind of thing.
Yeah.
Headbutt first onto.
And he's definitely meant to be played more on 2D sections because when you have the 3D sections of his levels, it can definitely feel pretty bad.
Out of interest, could you explain what Crash Bandicoot N-Hanced is?
Oh, so N-Hanced is I don't want to say a full-fledged mod, but it's a mod of the game that is pretty much the quality of life mod for Crash 4. There's been pretty infamous things that casual players do not like at all about the game. One thing being, the amount of collectibles that it is. The fact that the collectible where you can't die, that's only present in OG1, the very first Crash Bandicoot game, because if you want to get the gem, you can't die. And when NST1, the remake, came along, they removed that. For most levels, the levels where you collect the color gem, you still can't die. And it was a pretty nice addition. But then for Crash 4, pretty much 99% of people agree that bringing that back into the game and being it a difficult game at that kind of makes no sense. It just adds more time for the sake of it. So the N-Hanced mod addresses like a lot of those complaints that casual players have with the vanilla game. And it also adds, stuff that the modder for that mod just wants to add for the sake of it. If you're making your own mod, might as well add a few things that you personally like. For example, in Crash 4, there's only 4 color gems. There's red, green, blue, and yellow. And the modder adds a purple gem to the game. And it also adds a purple gem platform to access a part of a level.
Okay.
And another very infamous complaint is the fact that, for example, for any percent, you have, if I'm not mistaken, 29 levels to do. And there's these 9 extra timeline levels that you don't need to do to beat the final boss. And the timeline
Those are the ones with the
levels,
other characters, aren't they?
yeah, you play with
If I
the other
remember right.
characters, and you play with the other characters to some point, and then when you reach that point, you go back to Crash. And when you
Yeah.
go back to Crash, you play a section of the level that you have already played in another
Yeah.
level. So you're essentially
Yes.
just repeating the same section. So yeah, that's another complaint. And enhanced mod. Literally, once you reach the end of the timeline character part of the level, the crash section, it puts you right at the end of the level.
Lovely.
To kind of compare how much that takes away in terms of time, in Crash 4 Vanilla, the world record for ACG is 219. And for the enhanced mod, which is I also have, is 159, which can be slightly better. So over 20 minutes of the
Of like
run in
duplicate
that
crash running
category.
that's been removed.
Yeah. And the flashback tapes are majority of them. I want to say like 75% of the flashback tapes are original. The modder just altered them altogether.
Oh, okay. Like made their own or just grouped the levels together?
No, it's he pretty much wanted to create his own puzzles for the
Oh,
flashback tapes. So
interesting.
there's a few. I think there's like only two or three that are entirely the same, and then a couple more that just have slight modifications. But the majority of them are 100% different.
That's interesting.
And that is definitely my favorite part about the mod.
Only way to ask was I saw it does have its own category that's game slash mod quote unquote on speedrun.com, so it was interesting. Going away from speedrunning into a different kind of challenge run, where did the interest or thought to go into hitless runs for the Crash series come from or start from?
Yes, sir. I've also known about Hitless for quite a while now, pretty much just from the Dark Souls part of it. And I started branching out to Hitless when Team Hitless added Crash to Team Hitless as
Okay.
well. Before it was added, I pretty much never had that idea of doing challenge runs to Crash Bandicoot. But as soon as it was added, I felt like maybe that's actually a good idea. Tried a few runs. I have any percent for all of them. I have some completion categories for some of them. But yeah, I do eventually want to get back on doing some categories for Hitless once I finished my current speedrunning arc.
Is there an approach to hitless running that's different from speed running that you took for learning them, or was it just refining stuff you'd already built up whilst you've been speed running?
I'm gonna be honest. I don't think so, like at all, because I feel like with your casual hitless runner, I have way more advantage because I've been speedrunning the games for very long,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
have way more knowledge than your casual hitless runner would have.
of
And
course, yeah.
I think that being a speedrunner sometimes is detrimental when I'm doing hitless
Okay.
runs because I cannot not go fast. It's impossible for me.
Yeah, I
Uh,
could. I was watching through, I think it was one of your Crash 4 ones, and there's some boxes like hovering in the air with Dingo Dial, and you're just doing it rapid. And I know Crash 4 introduced like the yellow circle, which is a huge help, but still, I was like going, holy god, going this fast in the hitless run. Or like,
I think you can also make like that comparison to because I always have a life split when I'm doing the hitless runs. And for example, NST 105, I think I think I'm the only person to have done a hitless. But my current PB for speedrunning is 1 hour 51. And for the hitless is 2 hours and 2 minutes. So it's only like 10 minutes longer because it's that thing. I need to go fast, which is definitely detrimental because I feel like with the majority of the Crash games, I feel like if I just take it slow, I can do most of the runs like first try. But there's also the thing that like I'm used to go fast, so I already know some of the cycles.
Yeah.
And cycles are very important in the Crash series. So I feel the need to go fast because if I go fast, I already know what cycle I'm gonna
Yeah.
get, and I'm already familiar with that cycle.
We were speaking earlier, the appeal of the longer run categories of speedrunning was the fact of you don't need to reset on small mistakes or errors. But in some of the hitless runs you've done have been of long runs as well. But obviously the challenge of hitless running is if you do take a hit, it is if you are at a low enough PB, you have to reset. Was that a difficult challenge to go into, or
Can be. It is definitely way different than the speedrunning. I think that when I first started, I definitely started with, let's say, for example, doing the hit PBs, which is like getting to the end, you got hit 5 times, and then you do another one, you got 3 times, that's a PB. But I think that now I already have that knowledge from speedrunning that I think if I get hit once, I already reset because I feel like there's no
okay?
point in continuing the run. But I think that's just a me thing that I think that definitely for a casual runner, it is definitely like easier in some sense. And I feel like that aspect I talked about of, being a collectathon game,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I think that go kind of goes away with Hitless because I don't really have a preference of like any percent hitless versus a completion hitless. And even if I have the life split open, it's just to see how long I take because I know there's also speedrunning hitless, but I'm not that interested in it because I feel like it's just I don't think I would like the challenge of doing the same run, like the same challenge over and
Mm.
over. Maybe I would be more interested in the end of everything in the case of let's say I get to a point and I have done all categories in Crash
Mm.
Hitless. But still, I don't think I would be that much interested in speedrunning Hitless.
Out of interest, because I imagine some people may be wondering the difference. So for hitless speedrunning, they're doing it hitless over and over again. I guess versus a typical speedrun, which is the same thing. What's the difference that you find between themselves? Is it just the additional aspect that it's just nicer just to focus on the speedrun in the purest sense, quote unquote?
I think yes. I think for me it's definitely that additional aspect because I th- like you can call speedrunning a challenge, but it's in this like as you said, quote unquote, it's in the purest form. Going off a little bit on the tangent here, I used to be a competitive swimmer,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's partially where my enjoyment from speedrunning comes from because it's improving your time over and over, trying to be faster than you were yesterday.
Yeah.
And I think that, for example, with hitless is definitely a challenge. And for me, if you're doing a challenge and you've successfully done that challenge,
Mm-hmm.
personally, I don't feel the need to try and do that challenge again because I already proved that I can do it.
Understand. It's so for like a real life example, which I've spoken to other guests who feel this way is like say a marathon. Some people like to have completed it and said, okay, that's ticked off my bucket list. I've completed a marathon. That's the challenge done. And some people also want to go, well, I've done it in 4 hours, but now can I do it in 3 1/4, 3.5, 3 1/4, 3 hours? And some people are happy with one, and some people want to keep doing it the other.
Yeah. I personally haven't done a marathon, but that's also one thing that I would really like to do. And yeah, that is a very interesting, I guess, question to pose to myself that I think it can really only be answered after I do that challenge.
Mm.
Um, like after I finish a marathon, if I would be inclined to do it again, but faster. Uh,
Obviously, this is completely different things. Obviously,
yeah,
one's
that
a
that is a
game aspect, and
very
one's a physical exertion, which is very painful
yeah,
to do.
that is a very interesting point.
Mm.
I'll say I have done a half marathon.
Nice. They're fun to experience, but also nice to tick off the list.
And I now thinking a little bit more about it, I guess it would also depend on, let's say, if you do a marathon, nothing says that if you want to do another marathon, it would need to be the same marathon.
True. Yep.
Like you can run a marathon at anywhere in the world. So you experience the marathon aspect, but you don't experience like the same visuals that you've seen in your first marathon.
It's one way to do sightseeing. I wanted to ask about your experience in events, like showcasing runs. So I've seen that you've done some Hitless showcases for the team Hitless that we spoke about earlier, as well as ESA, which is a big speedrunning organization. Obviously different styles of showcase. One's an online feature and one's an actual live in-person event. I'm just wondering how, or your experience with those sort of events. Enjoyable, obviously nervous, I guess.
Yeah, that all of those that you listed are definitely enjoyable. Like it's definitely things I would definitely repeat. Not only, to display the challenge run, for example, for more people that didn't catch it on the first time. As for example, with ESA to, that thing of meeting your internet friends that are all from around the world.
Mm-hmm.
The nervous aspect, I think, only comes from like the initial 10 minutes after I start like the showcase that I'm doing. I think that after the 10 minutes, I can already calm down a little bit. It's like it's just another speed run that I'm doing, but I kind of need to like internalize that in the first 10 minutes because I think if you go back to watch my ESA showcase, I think that's like the first 10 minutes I don't talk or barely talk, because that's the thing that I said to my commentators to like carry it a little bit in the beginning, so I can like calm myself down. But yeah, I'm definitely a nervous type of person, but it's definitely only for like the very beginning of the showcase.
Then you sort of just like get into the flow of this is a
Yeah.
run I'm comfortable with, and just now you can relax and get into it.
Yeah, it's just the thought. Like the thought is what makes me nervous. But once I'm doing the actual showcase, I can already like calm myself down more.
For people who might not know, how is those sorts of events organized? Is it a submission thing? Do you have to like apply, approved, and they send a plane over? Like, how does those sorts of events work on like the runner's side?
For ESA, and I think the same for GDQ, Games Done Quick, is you submit a run. You can submit your PB, or what I was advised to do, because I've asked other people that have already showcased before in previous events, is you do a run where you commentate what's happening. Because usually on your PB run, you're just doing a speed run. You're not explaining anything.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's definitely advised to submit a run where you're explaining stuff, because the person that's gonna see your run sees, I guess they see like if it's an interesting run.
yeah.
I don't know what, but yeah, from the runner side, it's just submitting that run with like I had to fill out a form of like the estimate time, because obviously it's a marathon event and they have to fit more runs after yours.
Yeah.
So you always have to provide an estimate, and that's also something to keep in mind of, because for example, I think, in my opinion, it is harder to get longer runs into marathons. In my opinion, I think it has to be a very interesting run, because instead of having, let's say, a 2 hour run, you can have, let's say, three 30-minute runs, for example.
More variety in that same time slot kind of thing.
Yeah. So there's definitely that. It's kind of advised that you submit a run with like interesting commentary. You can also have, not family friendly discourse in your PV that, if those marathons see, they like,
Yeah, definitely
this
not.
this guy badmouths a lot. Better not have him.
Because they're both charity events, aren't they? They're both raising money, so they're definitely wanting to appeal to like the as
Yeah,
wide an audience as possible.
and it's also, I don't know. I'm gonna say it. I'm interested in submitting for SGDQ in 2026,
Hmm.
and for me it's all like strategizing, because it's like, is it a run that has never been on GDQ? And as well, like, nothing says that you can't submit more than once. So for example, if one of your concerns is time, you can definitely do stuff like submit a 2-hour run, but then you can also submit a 40-minute category.
Okay. So like if they like your commentary style or something like that, but they don't want to fill up such a big time slot, it's like, okay,
Yes,
we like
yes.
this guy, but let's put the shorter category of game that they're going to be playing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm interested. What is it self-funded for the events? Also, you apply, it's accepted, but do you then have to sort everything out yourself in order to get to the location and hotels and everything, or is that something on their side that they help with? I don't know, like the background of that.
No, once you have to take care of everything yourself.
Okay.
The thing that I think I only have experience with ESA, but I think it
Hmm.
also applies to GDQ, is that the hotel, like, obviously they have to have a venue to do
Hmm.
the marathon,
Yep.
and the hotel that has that venue, they usually do like cheaper than the regular price, because
Like
they
discounted.
yeah, they already know there's going to be an event. They already know there's going to be people like showing up to that
Yep.
location, to that hotel. So you do it cheaper. But yeah,
Mhm.
you have to do everything yourself. There's nothing like,
Subsidized or anything like that.
yeah, no, no, no.
Before we go into some quick final questions, I did read in your Twitch description that describe yourself as an anime fanatic.
Oh boy.
so, so
Oh
I wanted
boy.
to I wanted to ask if you had any recommendations, like of a maybe a popular series and one that you think not many people have seen but you really like.
Popular series? I definitely
Okay,
already have a question. I have an answer for not popular.
okay, perfect.
But popular series.
Doesn't necessarily need to be. It could be two unpopular if you want that you just think more people should be checking out.
I think I will kind of need to go with a biased opinion and go with Dr. Stone.
Yep.
Um,
Hmm.
because my college background, I have a degree in chemistry, and
Nice.
I just love everything Dr. Stone explains. Like,
Hmm.
whenever they're making a new invention,
Yep.
they explain like detail by detail, like the
So,
process of it.
just give it a bit background. Doctor Stone is an anime about a guy who gets frozen in stone for thousands of years, millions, maybe thousands of years, and then recovers because he gets petrified, unpetrified, and then basically is building the world from the Stone Age to the modern day and brings in a lot of science and things to create phones and running water and all this stuff. So just a bit of background there.
Yeah, exactly.
So from someone who knows the stuff, how good's the science in it? Because it seems legit when watching it.
Yeah, it is definitely legit. Like,
Mm.
everything that they explain is like 100% like the way you're supposed to do.
Mm.
I don't know everything that they explain, because they also go towards the physics side, and that's an area that I'm not that strong.
Hmm.
But everything chemistry they explain, they have it spot on.
It's timing as well because I think a new season just started.
Yes, sir, and I am watching it.
I need to catch up. Um, and any other recommendation? A second one?
Pretty unpopular.
Hmm.
I would definitely need to go with ID Invaded. Do you know that one?
Is that the one? If, is it a bit? Have you seen Minority Report?
No,
The
I don't
film? No.
even recognize the name.
No worries, it's a Tom Cruise film, but it reminds me. It's something where the anime that's coming to mind is one where they like sit in chairs and they get plugged in, and it's like a detective thing, or is that a different one?
Yeah,
Is that the
that's
one?
exactly it. Like it's like Sherlock Holmes-y, but it happens. Everything happens inside people's minds.
Yeah, yeah, I recognize it. It's I remember enjoying it, but it has been several years since I've seen it.
Yeah, I think it came out 2019, if I'm not mistaken. The opening is a banger, the ending is a banger, and the animation as well, and the characters. I really like that anime, and I think it's definitely an anime that not a lot of people know about.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of like the psychological anime out there. If some sort of similar lines, but I'd also recommend Psychopaths if you've seen that.
Definitely, yeah.
First couple of seasons, that was decent. There was another one that crossed my mind, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
Oh, I have another one.
Oh, go on.
I don't exactly remember the number. It's either 91 days or 97 days, something like that.
Oh, this isn't one I've seen, but I do recognize maybe what you're talking about. What's it about again?
It's pretty the anime a TLDR about the anime. It's literally like Italian mafia, and that's it. I also really like that one. Like it's a story about like revenge and all things that happen, like the bad things about mafia and stuff like that. I I
So
can't remember if it's 91 or 97 days, but it's one of those two.
it's not. I think that's going to be close enough so if people are interested, they
Yeah.
can find it. Right, we're going to go into some quick questions and then we'll finish up. So,
sir.
if you had one piece of advice for a new speedrunner or a new hitless runner, what would that advice be?
I feel like it's a very like cliche thing to say, but I feel like it's also something that is overlooked, and it's speedrun a game that you like, or do a hitless run of the game that you like. I mean, obviously it depends on the person that you are. If you want to just like amass hitless challenges for yourself, like for example, do a game that you don't like and then call it a day once you get the run, that's fine. But I think, yeah, if you don't enjoy the game that you're doing, don't force yourself to do it, because it all comes back to that talk that we had about the mentality aspect. But yeah, because it's like you don't need, even if it's a game that you like, it can also like, I think there's a distinction between a game that you like and a speedrun that you like, because the game that you like might have a terrible speedrun. But I think it's that if you're unsure if you want to try speedrunning, do like, let's say, 5 no resets. And I think by that point you can see that maybe I'm quite invested into this speedrun. Speedrun seems fun. But yeah, I think like do a couple of no resets and see if you like the speedrun.
Yeah, I think that's pretty solid. I just had a couple of examples come to mind. Like a game I really like is Hollow Knight, and because of that, although speedrunning is not really my thing, so that's something that I like trying, speedrunning with Hollow Knight. But on the same level, one of my favorite games is Dragon Quest VIII, and I cannot imagine going anywhere near that speedrun because it's probably like 12 hours long.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've seen cases of someone liking a game a lot and then having a bad mentality when starting speedrun, and then they don't like that game anymore because it's always going to be connected to that bad mentality that they had.
If one game could be released tomorrow, an announced game or maybe an unannounced game, a sequel or a remake that you've always wanted, what game would it be?
I have one answer, but I'm trying to think of one. I think it would either be. I think I would rule out anything from software. I like the From Software games, but if it releases, it's like good. If it doesn't release, it's like whatever for me. It could be Persona 6 for me, or and I guess I completely forgot. It can also be Kingdom Hearts 4, because that is like Kingdom Hearts, like it's not my favorite game. Like none of the games in the series are my favorite game, but the series as a whole is definitely my favorite. So it would definitely be between Persona 6 or Kingdom Hearts 4.
I've been wanting to try Persona for a while, but I keep getting scared away by the play length.
Yeah.
One day.
Because it's that thing that you can't think of Persona as a JRPG, just a JRPG. It's a JRPG and a light novel. Because I've seen so many complaints about Persona where it's like, I like the combat aspect, but I don't like all the reading. And it's like, that I guess you don't like the game then, because that is Persona. But yeah, that is one thing that I like about games. I like the majority of the games that I play casually are all JRPGs. They're all upwards to like 100+ hours to like get the platinum trophy. A lot of games in JRPG, and for example, Persona 5 definitely have the issues of the tutorial is definitely super long. So I can see when you're starting out, it can be a little bit boring.
It's been recommended to me that much that I think one day I will try it, but at the same time, I do have a lot of games in my library gathering dust already.
Yeah. I've recently went back to like do some of the games that I've even bought. I just literally never play them.
Oh, that's on sale. I've been meaning to play that for a while. Okay, I'll buy it. I'll see you in 2 years. That's been me with a few games. If you could recommend one game for its soundtrack, which game would it be?
Neo, the world ends with you. Right
World
off.
Ends With You.
It's not even a question.
That was quick.
Are you familiar with The World Ends With You?
I've seen a trailer and it got recommended to me sometime, 2025 into it, so last year.
Yeah, like the game is there's two games in the series. There's one for the DS, the Nintendo DS, and then it got remade for the Switch, and there's one for PS4, PC, Xbox, which is it's pretty much a sequel. It is by far my favorite game. The sequel with the first game is called The World Ends With You, and the sequel just adds Neo
Okay.
at the beginning. The soundtrack slaps so hard. Both the casual like soundtrack, because the game is spent on Shibuya. And like once you're running across the streets, like the casual soundtrack is pretty good, and the combat soundtrack is also pretty good. I don't remember. I'm pretty bad with names of soundtracks, so I can't recommend one off the top of my head.
No worries. Got the name, so we'll be checking out the playlist kind of thing on the
Yeah,
sites.
yeah.
What would you say if you could think of one as your most hyped or fond moment on stream or in your speedrunning career?
It would either be when I first got a world record in NST1, because that was my first world record that I ever got, or it would be when I broke the barrier of sub 220 in all clear gems in Crash 4 when I got 219. I think it's literally the only two times I've cried on stream. But yeah, you can definitely go back. The first world record that I got, I pretty much just like started crying like silently. But then with Crash 4, I've been trying to get like the sub 220 for so long that once I got it, I just screamed from the top of my lungs.
Like a finally kind of moment.
Yeah. It's like you get to the end and you're like, I don't have to play the game again. Finally. It's like that thing that speedrunners have with like, I hate this game. And then tomorrow they're just speedrunning it again.
This game is such trash. Okay, let's go for next run. I've had that feeling during hitless resets and such. Like, this game doesn't run properly. It's rubbish. Okay, let's carry on. It's all good though. It's the fun of it in a sense. Right, well, the final question today will be, what are the future plans of CookieNaval or Naval or however you pronounce?
So I've been keeping a track of how many world records I have/had.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, I have 6 world records. I have 6 main category world records.
Mm-hmm.
Because I also have some that aren't really category extensions, but they don't really belong to like the main board.
Mm-hmm.
I have 6 currently. I have 1 in NST3, 2 in Game Boy Advance, 2 in Crash 4, and then full Trilogy completion I also have. I've had 2 world records in NST1, which is all gems and 105. So I've had 8 total. And currently my goal is, like, my only goal for 2025 is to get to 10, hopefully, 10 total. But yeah, it's explore some of the Crash games that I haven't done to see if I like them. And I also want to finish some hitless runs that I haven't done. Mainly, again, Crash for 106. I don't think there's gonna be anyone that's gonna go for that. So I feel like obligated to be the guy that does it. It's like I forget his name, but like that one guy that got 202 berries in Celeste.
Oh, Rick Finello.
Yeah. Like he's the guy. Like how long do we have to wait for someone else to get 202? So that, and I guess some content creation as well. I have some plans for like scripted videos or some plans for like challenge runs as well. I've done one challenge run, which is Crash 1 NST, but all the boxes are invisible. So, for example, if you have like the bonus rounds of Crash 1, they're only boxes, even like metal boxes that, don't count for the total tally. They're all invisible. So you need to go
It's
like
a real test of memory.
yeah. Sometimes it's like trial and error. But yeah, I've done that challenge run. There was a bonus round that I spent 1 hour. It was awful. But yeah, I do have some challenges like that in my head. One other example is getting platinum relics, but but time boxes don't exist.
Okay. So just seeing what a pure run of the levels would take, how long it would take.
Yeah. Hey, general scripted videos for content creation as well.
And if people wanted to check you out, where would they be looking?
Either Twitch or YouTube. Sometimes I stream on both at the same time. Twitch.tv/CookieNaval, and YouTube, it's also CookieNaval. But yeah, mainly those 2 platforms. You couldn't pay me enough to create a TikTok account.
Obviously, all links to Cookie will be in the description below on whichever platform you're listening on. But yeah, it's been a solid chat through this. I hope you've had a good time, Cookie.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. I've only had a podcast experience in the past, and it was with a friend of mine. So it was definitely somewhat interesting to have like someone that I don't know interviewing me for the podcast. It was pretty fun.
Sorted. And I hope everyone who's listening has had a good time as well. And hope everyone has a great morning, evening, or day, depending on your current time. And we'll see you for the next episode. If you enjoyed that conversation and want to hear more with amazing guests, be sure to head over to youtube.com/@nohitpodcast or wayofloci.com/nohitpodcast